Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for our third Facebook Live of the 21-22 school year. We've taken your questions and we'll be addressing them during this event. From masks and health protocols to curriculum and critical race theory, we hear you and our team is ready to provide answers. We appreciate your engagement and know that we go further together. We know that this is a difficult time for all, and we want you to know we understand your frustration. I have a personal request to our community. Please do all that you can to support our schools and the core of what we do, the teaching and learning in the classroom. Based on your specific questions, we've invited Dave Newlan, our Executive Director for Safety, Security, and Emergency Management, and Dr. Jeff Spiro, the Chief Academic Officer, to assist us. To provide these questions collected on Facebook, Rob Spicker, our Assistant Director of Media Relations and Public Information, is here to kick this off.
All right, thank you, Dr. Savage. We did solicit a number of questions from our families last night via email, so we've put a lot of those together, either as specific questions or grouped those that are of a similar theme. And one of the main questions, again, always has to do with masks, so we're going to start there with a question about where are we right now as a school district in terms of a mask situation, a requirement, the 30-day mask mandate, the opt-out forms. Where are we currently?
Absolutely. I'll take that one, Rob. So essentially, we are still in the midst of our 30-day mask requirement, and that is our position right now, is that masks are actually required, and we expect students to wear them. All we are simply doing is allowing for the opt-out. We already had opt-out provisions for medical and disability-related pieces, and then to be in compliance with the law, we have allowed for that parent opt-out that is the DOE's interpretation of the law as it stands right now and has been, is currently in force with the legal decision where the appellate court that was essentially to hear the appeal from the circuit court ruling that allowed us to take away that option is put a stay back in place. So the executive order as it stood before that we must allow that opt-out pursuant to state law as issued by the governor is still in effect. But we will continue to have this opt-out for the full required masks for the full 30 days. That's for staff and for students, except for those opt-outs that are qualified. And then we will continue to look at the data as we are already doing to make a determination if we have to extend the 30 days or not.
All right, so we'll be watching for that at the end of the month. A question was asked by several people about, again, with the mask, and you mentioned the court challenges. They're curious, why are we not continuing to defy these court rulings as other districts are and have the mandatory masks?
Yeah, that's a great question and a very common question that we get. So why would we have done the take away that parent opt-out and then all of a sudden reverse course? Well, the main reason is because we didn't. While the science from our medical experts that we rely on, both not at just the national level, but all the way down to our local level and our local system, unequivocally take the stance that masks help make us safer as one strategy among many others, including vaccinations being far and away the most highly recommended. But knowing that many of our students can't be vaccinated, specifically ages 12 and under at this time, it's so important to use all those additional mitigation efforts. And so masks, just being one of them, we absolutely would implement the mask full mandate and not have a parent opt-out if that were fully available to us. But the governor's executive order was very specific, and the way that the court has, initially, the way that the governor had interpreted this and all of the supportive aspects to the government that have had an opportunity to weigh in on this have essentially solidified the governor's position. The circuit court ruling essentially said it was not and made it unconstitutional. As soon as that decision was made, the verbal ruling was issued. That, in our opinion, and certainly what I was relying upon, it made it permissible for us to then take away that parent opt-out, that it was ruled unconstitutional, that it was up to us, that we had the discretion, the same type of discretion we had through last year's pandemic. And so we did not allow for that parent opt-out while legally we were permitted to do that. The challenge, unfortunately, with the court case was that once the appeal was filed and the stay went into place, we thought we would still be okay because it was kind of unresolved. Unfortunately, not just the stay that was reinstated by the appellate court, but additionally the language in that stay that reinstituted that stay was very specific, that seemed to cast doubt on the logic that the circuit court used. And that's the legal authority upon that we would have relied upon to make that initial argument. Some of these other districts, they took this adverse position prior to that ruling. And so they are making a legal argument. It would be debatable whether or not they have the authority to do it. That is not something that has currently been settled, but certainly was addressed in that court case. So it's a lot of legal answers to basically say, I am an executive. My job is to enforce the law. I am not a politician. I cannot make the law. I'm not empowered to do that. I have to follow the law. And at the current time, that is what we are doing, but that does not change the fact that I strongly urge anyone to opt in. This is not about politics. This is not about being a Democrat or a Republican. This is about trying to save lives and really execute safety policies within the letter of the law. So while I am bound to follow the law, I will not stop pushing for every safety mechanism, specifically while we are in this surge event.
We did hear from a number of parents who support the requiring of masks, so they want to know how can they be ensure that their children are wearing their masks at school as they want them to, and is there a situation where a mandatory mask requirement could come back?
Yes, well, I definitely take the position based on the guidance given to us from our expert medical as well as from the federal government that masks work, that they play an additional role in that piece. Now, again, I am not an expert in masks, and I don't particularly enjoy wearing a mask, but as a mitigation strategy, that is the overwhelming opinion that we have received. While there are some that will state that they don't work, that they don't have that effective, that's not the answer we've had from our local medical experts as well as all the way up to the federal government. That masks, even the state surgeon general who issued the opinion also wrote an article on masks. So I think there's a pretty strong, robust scientific opinion that masks do serve a function. They are not everything. They are just one additional piece. However, I absolutely support the idea that masks play a role, and they certainly would be mandatory, as we indicated, if we were legally allowed to do so. So if the law were to allow us that opportunity to then have that local discretion, as we did during this week of time period where the law was very much unsettled, I would continue to advocate for that. And I think this is an evolving legal issue. While we've only talked about one case so far, there will be more cases. There will be lots of opportunity to have this involved, and there's even the federal government has taken an interest in what's happening in Florida relative to this area. So I would say we continue to monitor it, but I am very much in favor of requiring masks during the surge in accordance with the guidance that we've received from our experts.
A lot of parents want to know, and you've mentioned there are other mitigation efforts, that the mask is just one part. So what is being done in the schools to help keep children safe?
Yeah, at this time currently, we have so many different mitigation. This is really the full complement of our strategies are in play, and we continue to try to add more. We continue our engagement with the Department of Health. The federal government has supported some additional mechanisms that we continue to work with them on, including increased testing and things of that nature. However, there are so many that are already in play. All of our cleaning protocols, one of the things that's most important is our HVAC system. We have the introduction of the maximum level of fresh air, so we have the largest amount of fresh air exchanges that we can do. We monitor CO2 levels to ensure we're getting more fresh air. We do the surface cleaning. Obviously, the masks are required and expected for all students and staff. We do whatever distancing we can achieve. We have one-way hallways. We do eat and dine in their classrooms. I mean, there's so many. And I would say for anyone who isn't quite aware of all the other things we're doing, I encourage you to go to our website and take a look at all of those pieces, because there's so many, and all of them are really being implemented at this time. I don't know if Mr. Newlan wants, if there's anything critical that I left out there that you might want to add.
As far as mitigation efforts is going towards, talking about as far as masking and other areas you're talking about, you've covered most of those. Any other question that has to do with security or safety, I'll be glad to answer.
Right.
And that's that topic.
So another question that came in, Dr. Savage, that based on President Biden's recent announcement, will this school district be mandating vaccinations for students and staff or weekly testing? Where are we on that?
Well, we are currently reviewing the White House plan. We're aware that there's a vaccine component, and we're looking at that. As for testing, we do offer tests now in all of our schools in partnership with the Florida Department of Health. Symptomatic students and employees can be tested Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and on Fridays from 8 a.m. to noon in our schools. We're also talking with the Florida Department of Health about our COVID-19 screening options. But as these things kind of are fluid and dynamic, we continue to monitor all those pieces and how it impacts us.
Are volunteers going to be able to come back into the schoolhouse at any time soon?
Rob, I'll be happy to answer that question. So in relation to volunteers, our pandemic team is constantly looking at the numbers that are provided to us from the Department of Health, and we're also looking at our internal numbers as well. We very much want to get volunteers back in schools. We need your help inside of the school building in relation to a small group instruction, helping out the media center, wherever we can have volunteers in the building. We want to get you back there as soon as possible. So in the earliest possible manner in which we can make that happen, then that'll become a reality. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you, Dr. Spiro, and this may come your direction as well, or maybe for Dr. Savage, as we switch gears and talk more about academics now. But what are the district's thoughts about the governor's decision just announced yesterday to end and transition out of the FSA test?
So I'll say a few words, and then I'm sure Dr. Savage, who's very much academically minded, I'm sure he'll have a few words as well. From my point of view as the chief academic officer for the school district of Lee County, we applaud the governor, and we applaud his decision to end the FSA and focus on progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is what we are currently doing in our schools. That is the data that we are using to help drive instructions, to create small groups, to determine interventions, to determine enrichment. It's the most timely piece of information that we have. So we want to thank him for that decision. Now, there are some details that certainly weren't shared yesterday at the governor's announcement, such as what does this mean for the end of course exams? What does this mean for the 10th grade graduation requirement in the ELA, or 3rd grade retentions as well? So there are a number of issues certainly I'm looking forward to reading about and learning more about as that technical paper is released. But on its face, this is really great for our students and for our teachers. And Dr. Savage, I don't know if you want to add anything else, sir.
Well, I just want to echo everything Dr. Spiro said. This is really, high stakes testing, it came from a position of wanting, let's put it this way. When we started grading schools and all the things that kind of went with it, high stakes testing was a huge part of that. It was an attempt to see Florida move from a pretty deregulated state without any kind of accountability for the learning happening in our classrooms to taking us to one of the highest achieving states relative to this piece. And it wasn't just our high standards, it was the fact that we tested it, and we tested with very ambitious tests. So the reality is that annual data that you get from those high stakes tests are powerful. However, the educational research is very clear that you really need to be collecting information on students all year round. And it's so important that we know how they're learning. You don't wait until the end of the year and then find out how effective things were. And by the time they take that test, was it even valid? Was it accurate? Was a child so traumatized and scared because of the implications of being retained in 3rd grade that maybe they don't perform as well as they could have? And so it's trying to benefit the best from getting the best information we can about student performance so that we can make informed decisions, and doing it, as Dr. Spiro said, on an ongoing basis. That is absolutely what the educational research says we should be doing. I think, though, the devil will be in the details. How will we make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable? How will we ensure that the information that we're getting is reliable and valid, and that it truly is something that gives us powerful information? There's a lot to be done there, and procedurally still has to make its way through the legislature. So I'm cautiously very optimistic about it, but we'll reserve the right to kind of take a more in-depth analysis of that piece. So thank you.
Dr. Spiro, I think you touched on this, but the follow-up was, what does this decision, where does it put our students and our teachers this year in terms of graduation in VAM? And maybe describe what VAM is for our non-teachers.
Sure. Well, actually, so all of the testing requirements, all of that remain in effect for this upcoming school year. So for our current students in the current grade in which they are enrolled, it changes nothing for this upcoming year. And as Dr. Savage said, there's some other other things that need to have happen. For example, legislation needs to approve the removal of the FSA. And so they're looking for the following year to be that baseline year. So for this upcoming year right now, for this year right now where we are, changes nothing as far as graduation requirements, the value added model for our teachers, and any of the testing that we currently have in place.
There's always been a lot of concern this year with the impact of COVID. Quarantine students at home, last year learning from home, how that impacts their learning. So one of the theme of the questions was, what is our focus right now on student achievement? How are we supporting schools and the standard-based instruction?
Sure. I would love to talk about that. First off, I want to thank our teachers. I really want to thank our teachers because this year has been the most challenging school year we've had, period. We thought last year was going to be challenging. This year has just amplified that even more. So thank you to our teachers first off. Our teachers are focusing on the social emotional learning of students first. We're making sure our kids are okay. That's what I mean when I say that. We're making sure our kids are okay before teaching and learning ever occurs, because we need to make sure our kids are good before we can start focusing on academics. And then once we focus on academics, we are focused on the standards. We are a standards-driven district, and so our teachers are focused on our standards. Your child should see inside of their school. They should see some of the interventions that are starting to take place. In elementary, they may call it walk to read. You would see small group instruction taking place. There's enrichment opportunities for students that have already mastered those standards as well. And as I've spoken previously at the other Facebook Live, remember we have Zoom tutoring available for your children. So during the school day, if a student is home, they can do Connect with Lee during the day, where they can Zoom in with one of our district content coordinators who can help them with any homework help they have during the day, and after school as well. We have teachers in the evening with Connect with Lee after school to help students who may have some homework needs. Also, check with your school. A lot of schools are doing after-school homework help, after-school tutoring. There are a lot of enrichment activities that are happening at the schools also. So not only with Connect with Lee, but check with your individual schools too. So parents, you should see standards being taught. You should see interventions and enrichment happening in your schools.
All right, thank you, Dr. Spiro. One more question in this theme is, what are your thoughts, the district thoughts, about critical race theory, and how do we plan to address the issues concerning this topic?
Well, the first and foremost, we do recognize that this has taken on a political stance, but quite frankly, the critical race theory has been banned from our Governor DeSantis. I think there's larger conversation about what critical race theory even is. I can assure you that in our schools, anywhere in the state of Florida, all of the schools in our state, we teach the Florida standards. That's what we teach. All of our courses design exactly which standards are taught. Anyone who wants to see what those standards are, they can go to the state website, they go to our website, you can see our curriculum maps, all the different things that we do. We teach the standards. That's our position, and it really is every single school district in Florida, public school system in Florida, we are all bound to teach the standards. So this really is not too much of a conversation here at this level. You do find that in higher ed, there are more conversations around critical race theory, but for us, it is as simple as we teach the Florida standards.
There's a couple questions coming in. I'll add, they're all in the same vein as the people commenting on Facebook, and they're wondering about virtual options. Are they available, and virtual options for our ESE students? I know there are some roadblocks to that, so could we explain what may or may not be available?
So again, as we discussed at the last Facebook Live that we had, the only options that we have available for students right now, for those that don't want to come to school face-to-face, is homeschool. Homeschool is an option, and then there's Homeschool Flex, which allows a student who is at home to take a Florida virtual school online. Soon, through our student enrollment office, we will begin to advertise the opportunities for families to enroll in our Leave Virtual School program for the second semester. So that would be second semester enrollment. And so those dates will be shared shortly once we're in that window.
And that would apply to all students across the board.
Correct. And let me talk a little bit about our ESE support as well. So I talked to you earlier about Connect with Lee, which is during the day and after school tutoring for one-on-one students where they can Zoom link live with a certified educator. We also have ESE support and English language learner support as well. That's tailored to our ESE students and our ELL students. And so when you're using Connect with Lee, those certified educators will make sure that they connect you with the right person.
All right, thank you, Dr. Spiro. There were some questions asking us to comment about the events of last week at the Harnsmarsh Middle School and how it reflects upon our partnership with the Lee County Sheriff's Office and our other school resource officer providing law enforcement agencies. And perhaps, Dave, that's for you.
Yeah, so let me start by saying this. First of all, I got to say it's a very unfortunate incident. I mean, it's something we don't want to deal with, but we know it's reality, unfortunately, these days. But we have an obligation, a responsibility to protect our students, protect our parents, our public. We want to make sure when parents drop their kids off that their kids are in good hands so we can provide them with the best education possible and not think about the things we're dealing with right now as what happened earlier in the week. But we have to make it known that these things are zero tolerance when these things happen, and those that break the law will be held accountable. And that's the reality of it. But I got to commend the staff at the school. They did a great job in how they responded to the incident. The students, everybody involved. I know it's probably a very traumatizing incident when you go through something like that, when it becomes reality. But that shows the training works. So with the constant training, and part of your question was, if that was our reflect on training and partnership with Lee County Sheriff's Office. And that just shows our partnership with our law enforcement agencies that through constant communication, coming up with a standardized procedure and process that everybody automatically knows what to do and when to do it is so important. And by maintaining a constant flow of communication on a consistent basis, as we have since last year into this year with the principals and staff members so we can answer questions they may have, that just shows that all these things work. So when we talk about the training, they go through the annual training every year, the standard response protocols, the monthly drills, the ALICE training, alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. These are all important things that these things come in these situations when they're being trained, and these things unfortunately happen. These things, you know what to do. The tools, you have the tools that are required. And we will continue to do the training on a consistent basis so our staff is prepared. And so we can make sure that, again, we want to make sure our students are well protected, the parents know they're in good hands, our public's protected, and our staff.
I think that's the follow-up that comes with this is how do we make sure our students are safe? How do we feel safe at home? And is everything being handled properly and properly reported when it does happen? One
of the things you have to look at as an organization, you have to always look at yourself and evaluate how are we doing? Can we do better? When we look at security measures, it's the same thing as part of what we do. So for example, this year we implemented something called Strategics. It was a panic alarm system put in every school in Lee County, in every building. And with a hit of a button, anytime there's a situation, let's say an active assailant on property, you hit the button, it goes right to 911. Automatically, our law enforcement is notified, and it expedites their response, as well as all the staff on the premise is also notified through several measures, through intercoms, through strobes, through the computers. Everybody's notified immediately what to do, when to do it, and the location of where that particular incident has taken place. So that's one of the things we looked at is to increase our security, to improve what we're currently doing. Threat assessments, as we all know, that's a systematic process to identify, inquire, and assess and manage a potential danger or violent situation. One of the things we put in place this year as well was a software program called Navigate 360. This helps the program because it helps to keep things in a searchable database. We can track things as we're doing. If a student or somebody transfers to another school location, we know where that student's at, and so does the school that's receiving that student, and if there's any history in that person or anything that we have to deal with. So we can track that information. We have Fortify Florida. Again, that's in everybody's Chrome computer. Anybody can call if they have a concern or report a concern or suspicious activity that goes notified to us at any time. We also have a hotline. You've probably heard of See Something, Say Something. There's a hotline that's also provided that's being used by law enforcement, public safety, helps utilize this system as well. So if somebody does call in to have information, it can be anonymous. That information can be reported. Again, looking at all these things, we're constantly looking at how we can improve our security measures, and part of that is to come up with a standardized procedure and process. And also the accountability part is looking at ourselves, like I mentioned earlier. So we're always looking to improve as we move forward, and how can we expedite, maintain that training with our staff, let the public know, again, that their kids are in good hands. We want to make sure their kids are safe, but we also want to provide the best quality education at the same time.
All right, thank you, Chief. Question from our Facebook viewers are wondering about our homecoming dances, which were temporarily put on hold back at the beginning of the month. Is there any update to those status?
Well, I'll answer that question because I'm one of the members of the pandemic team, and I know that was a topic of conversation. So right now, our homecoming dances are postponed right now. Doesn't mean they've been canceled. They've been postponed as we're in this surge, this pandemic surge that we have right now. So the goal certainly would be, as those numbers decrease, that we'll be able to provide an opportunity for students to have that homecoming dance. Now, I've seen on social media, a lot of our schools are still doing spirit weeks leading up to normally what would be that homecoming game. So I know there's a lot of festivities that are still occurring in school, but the dance itself has been postponed, and hopefully we'll have that at a future time.
All right, Dr. Spiro, thank you for that. Maybe to you, Dr. Savage, and maybe for all of you, but what have you seen beyond COVID in our schools that you've been impressed with so far this year? That's been the dominating theme, but there's a lot of good things happening as well.
Well, I think the probably number one thing that I've just been is just impressed. This is tough. We have staff shortages, like starting with school buses. It's not just here, it's all over the country. I mean, we love Amazon, we love our packages, but they've made the market for CDLs very competitive. We see it in our trash pickup in our communities. It's a big deal. And when you think about a school bus and all the students on there, that's a big ask. And so I want to start with just our school bus drivers, as all of our support staff as well. There are so many important positions that have to happen to make our school system run, and they are short in most of these areas. And so there's a lot asked of the people who are in those jobs. And then I'd go to our teachers and all the support staff in our classrooms. They, every single day, are trying to put children at the forefront, but they're being asked to cover classes while people have to go out on isolation or sick and home with their children and with COVID, or they're hospitalized. I mean, it's just unbelievable what the kind of conditions of what we're having to deal with, but we're doing it for children. We're doing it so that our community can run. We're doing it so parents can go to work, so kids can get some semblance of normalcy, and parents can contribute in society, because when things shut down, when schools shut down, everything shuts down. So we are trying to keep it going. But we're trying to do it amidst a surge that we have never experienced anything like it, and throughout the entire pandemic thus far. And so, as everyone has said, and as we've reiterated many times, the hope is to get through this moment in time and then continue to find creative ways in case this is not the end, in case we have more resurgence later on, because this surge will pass at some point. But then there could be another one, and hopefully it will never be as deadly as the one we're currently, but it's just a very difficult challenge that we continue to deal with. So I'm just so appreciative of all of our folks in our schools, and then our school leaders, who every day have to walk into the face of what an unbelievable challenge and find a way, find that desperate last ounce of energy that they have to pull it all together and make it all happen. And they do it for our community. They do it for our children. So to me, they are our heroes. Those are the people that I really am most impressed with. But I'm also impressed with our students. Our students have shown tremendous resilience. I think they just like to come together with their classmates. My own children are in school, and they love it. I've never seen my own children happier than they are right now, because they have an amazing teacher and they're at an amazing school. And so I can speak from a parent, I can speak as a former school leader, and I can say it as the leader of our schools currently, that it is a privilege to be in the school district of Lee County and see the heroes that make it happen every single day. I'm blown away to watch and witness it, in spite of the fact that it's a very difficult time and people are drained, people are tired, and it doesn't make it any easier that we're dealing with the politics we're dealing. And on that note, I do want to just reiterate one more time. The number one question I get all the time is, why can't we just mandate? Defy the governor. Well, and here's how I would tell them. Personally, I absolutely agree with that position. Personally, as Ken Savage person, parent, educated person, I fully believe that we are in an unprecedented surge. I believe that is accurate. When I see data from our local healthcare system that says that we're at high levels of capacity and people in our intensive care, people on ventilators, I believe it. I believe that it's true. And quite frankly, I know it because I've had personal folks that I know that are deceased from this. So this is a really serious moment in time, and that is not lost on me. But my personal attitude is not as significant as the fact that I am in a role and my role as the chief executive of this district is that I am here to enforce the law. And so while I might not agree with the governor's stance at all, that does not mean that I am not beholden to follow the law. And so I would say if you're a person out there that thinks we are empowered, that I am empowered to simply ignore the law, understand that that is not my understanding that I have that ability. And while personally I don't agree with that piece, I don't get to pick and choose the laws that are followed. And so I would say if you don't like the current state of the way things are, let the governor know about it. Ask your legislators who actually have the ability to pass laws to make us safer. Instead of posing for political moments, allow them to also pass laws, convene a session, do things that can make us absolutely safer. Ask them to do their job because they have the ability to make laws. I do not. If you have issues, we also have the court system. It's judges who have the ability to absolutely give us their opinion of what does the law say? How is it to be interpreted? Those are the proper mechanisms we have when we have laws that are questionable, not just telling people to break the law, specifically when we are in roles that we are not empowered to do so. And I would say the same thing for our schools. Please do not apply pressure to our principals or to our teachers to do things beyond the scope of what they are able to do. It's not appropriate for them. This was not their choice. All they are trying to do is educate the kids and keep people safe. What I choose to focus on is influence. While I may not have the law on our side, as I believe it to be reasonable, that said, I still have the ability to influence. And so I will continue to influence that in this community, we love each other. And anything we can do is to keep each other safe. That is my priority, because we have to educate students, but they have to be safe in order to be educated. And so use every bit of our influence personally to come together as a community, not to focus on political issues, but to focus on whatever we can do to keep each other safe, educate our children, and allow our community to operate. That's my priority.
Dr. Savage, thank you very much. Dr. Spiro and Dave Newlan, thank you for joining us. Everybody watching, thank you once again. We will do these Facebook Lives on a regular basis so that you can hear directly from the superintendent and other leaders with the school district. Thanks for joining us and have a good afternoon.